Pastor Blaine, there's been no one more involved in the inner workings of the church and the process and the procedure that we have to go through as we embrace the 3 C's. Talk to us specifically, what are we going to be looking at and voting on March the 3rd and 4th?
Well, thanks, John. We'll be asking the congregation to vote on 3 separate proposals on that weekend. The first has to do with the construction of what we're calling the campus hub. It will be a building in our parking lot right outside of our main lobby that will connect all of our buildings and, most importantly, house our children's ministry in the lower level. The second thing we'll be asking people to vote on is the extent of the capital campaign to pay not only for the campus hub, but also for some improvements in our communications infrastructure and for the launch of our church planting initiative. That capital campaign will be a $10 million campaign. We'll be asking the congregation to approve that. And then finally, the third resolution we'll put before the congregation has to do with any borrowing that might be needed to advance all of those proposals. For instance, some of that could be construction funding, which would be short-term funding just to get out of the gate. Some of it may be longer term, and that's something new to ACAC. It's been 25 years since we've had debt on our books, and so we'll be asking the congregation for the borrowing authorization to move forward.
Now, I didn't hear anything about a garage in there. Is that on purpose? Is it an oversight? Talk to us about that.
Well, the garage project is a separate piece of the puzzle. It's a whole separate decision, and frankly at this point we're still in negotiations with the hospital. Yes, we know that they'd like to see a garage there. They'd like to be able to park there and share it with us, but we're not at a place where we can bring those proposals to the congregation. So we just want everyone to know, yes, the garage is still out there, hasn't been finalized yet. When details are finalized and we feel that it's in the best interest of the church, our leadership has vetted those, we will bring those as a separate piece to the congregation. And they could affect those numbers that I talked about earlier. Okay. I mean, there could be some cost or borrowing associated with that. We'll deal with that as a separate piece if and when it makes sense to bring it to the congregation.
So let's review again. What will we be asked to vote on March the 3rd or 4th? Give us those 3 things real concise.
The building, the campus hub, building that building, approving a $10 million capital campaign, and the authorization to borrow at certain levels needed to move the initiative forward.
Okay. Talk to us about the hub some more. We've talked about this in the past, but why is this so important? Is it where we just trying to connect our buildings?
Well, listen, for a couple reasons. Number one, and the most important, we have to make provision to bring our children back across the street. The health system that has the master lease on our building,
who has treated us very well
at 4 Allegheny Center, and actually not only have they treated us well, they've not put a specific deadline on when we have to move. But what they have told us is they want to use that space for their purposes. And so we have to make provision.
Which is their right. I mean,
it's their right.
It's not a problem. They're expanding and need the space.
And they have graciously given us the time to make other provisions for our children. The campus hub is that provision. We're building space to do a first-class children's ministry right here on our own campus. And then the second reason for building the hub is simply to make our campus more welcoming, more friendly to new people who visit, and frankly, more family friendly. Right now, our families are split up into 4 different buildings when they come to worship. If you have children of all different ages, you literally are worshiping in 4 different buildings. We want to have better connections for our families by bringing everyone together and connecting all those spaces with this campus hub.
I've jokingly referred to you as Brother Budget over the years because you have had a hand in overseeing the finances. The second and third pieces of borrowing and capital campaign, Talk to us about the implications of that from your unique perspective.
Sure. Well, let's talk the total number first, the $10 million number. Most of that obviously is related to the building of a new building on our campus. In fact, and I know these are very conservative estimates, the designers we've been working with have told us they don't want us to be in a position of having to come back and say, oh, it's going to cost more.
Well, cost overrun.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is not a public arena.
So they've intentionally estimated everything at the high end. But anyhow, that high end estimate is $7.8 million. And so that's the biggest piece of the $10 million capital campaign. Along with that, there are some renovations to our existing facilities in order to fit well and accommodate the changes. And then you have also monies that will be set aside to improve our communications infrastructure. Again, prepare the way for us to be able to better communicate with this next generation. And then lastly, some funds to enable us to launch the church plant initiatives. The first of which will be our Homestead Church plant, which actually launches on Easter Sunday. But that's not a one and done. We want to see really a culture of church planting redeveloped at ACAC. And I say redeveloped because that was our DNA at the beginning. Most of the Alliance churches in this area have their roots at ACAC and church planters sent from this congregation. We're just redeveloping that.
Yeah,
so
we're
all
going
of
back
those
to our
things.
roots. We're trying to,
Exactly.
Going back to the past to take us forward into the
That
future.
is our spiritual DNA. We believe it's the DNA for the next gen also.
Yeah.
And then the last thing has to do with the debt. The last resolution that we'll bring for a vote. And again, there are two components to that debt. One would be just construction funding. We'll be raising funds for the building, as an example. But as we're raising funds, we may need to start paying architects and breaking ground. And so construction funding allows that to move forward. The other would be a certain amount to fill the gap between whatever we've raised and the total of the $10 million. We did have some long-term borrowing associated with our Simpson Hall project years ago when we built that, but we really haven't had any since then. And our bylaws require us to come to the congregation anytime we would look as a congregation to borrow money.
Yeah. Now, I know you're very fiscally responsible, as is our entire team. You are personally, you have been at the church. Does the thought of some measure of debt make you nervous at all?
It doesn't. It doesn't. And I know that there are folks who may have different ideas on that. I think the question is what reasonable level of debt can you sustain? But I look at it no differently than I look at debt for myself personally. I don't have an issue with borrowing for the mortgage on my house. It's a long-term asset. It's an appreciating asset. And so I don't struggle with that. I feel differently about other types of debt that have a tendency to be misused. So within limits, and we'll set those limits and discuss those limits with the congregation.
Blaine, the property across the street hasn't been for free, has it? I mean, we've been paying a rental fee across there, haven't we?
Absolutely. We pay $25,000 a month to lease that floor.
Worth every penny.
Worth every penny, but $300,000 a year. Now, those are funds that now would become available for debt service on a building that we would then own. And at the end of that loan term, that would become money that's available for ministry.
Right, right. And then we have a building that's ours, that we control the use of it until the Lord returns. Now, our leadership has already made a commitment towards the capital campaign. And we're going to be talking more about this, after we have the vote. But But we feel like we have money already in place that has been committed and when we come to the congregation for the capital campaign. Is that correct?
Well, even before we would bring these proposals to the congregation, as part of our discussion with our leadership, we went to our staff and operations board and board of elders and just asked, as we prepare to do this, would you be committed to supporting it, and if so, at what level? And from all three of those groups, there was, number one, universal support, but universal support in a significant way that leads us to believe that not only is our leadership behind it, but as a reflection of the congregation, as our congregation becomes aware of the plan, that they'll be anxious to be committed as well.
Yeah. You're a longtime member of ACAC, you and your family. Your kids were raised here. You excited about this project?
Oh,
How do you
my
think about
goodness.
it personally?
Listen, I can't wait to be a part of teeing up this congregation for the next generation of ministry here. It's been the greatest privilege for me and my wife and family to have watched how the Lord has transformed this congregation in my generation here, almost 32 years. And now to have the opportunity to be a part of setting the table for the next generation just excites me to no end.
Yeah. How old are we as a congregation?
1894, I believe, 125 years coming up here soon.
Yeah, so we have a chance to drive another stake in the ground, our generation to do something to hand the next generation the tools for ministry that are necessary in the 21st century and should the Lord tarry and beyond.
We absolutely do, and that will represent the decisions that we make on March 3rd and 4th.
Pastor Blaine, thanks for all your service, all your involvement, your commitment to the church. We couldn't be doing this without you and many other people. We are in good hands. Thanks for your time
Thanks, John.
today.